Right, so today's job, well, technically a couple of days job. This is the end of my garage, and I'm gonna be, well, I started to turn it into a gym, but the floor's not level, as it's a garage. It used to be outside. This used to be the driveway, but it's we had an extension built. Can't really see, it goes over the top, all on the outside. But anyway, so this used to be outside, and it slopes down obviously to drain away the rain and off onto the road. So I was originally, my first idea was to just put some leveling compound down and just level the floor. That's leveling compound that you can walk on once it's laid, so I didn't need to tile it or anything like that. But my initial assessment of the level was that it was pretty flat, and then when I had actually bought that stuff, I realised and actually started putting on some screws to actually set the levels and level that too. I realised there was quite a difference in heights, especially along this edge. So that's the highest corner, and there's about 70mm drop there, which is way more than this stuff can do, and it's also cost me a fortune in doing that. So second option then was screeding it, which can go to almost any thickness, and possibly put a coat of that on top. But again, that would have been expensive, and the screed would have taken a couple of weeks to dry, and be a lot of trouble to do. So what I decided to do was exactly as I've done in this storeroom area. This is just put down a wooden floor on top of this. So I'm trying to maximize the head clearance, as it's a gym, so you can swing your arms about and what have you. So I've just got some 2x2s to actually put the floorboards on, and I'll be supporting them at regular intervals along the floor, so it's not a problem. So basically, as I say, I've put the level down in each corner and taken some levels across and diagonally and down the sides. And as I say, that, not including that bit because I don't want to take that off, that piece there is the highest point of the floor. So what's going to happen is, when I lay out the joists, this one is going to be resting on the ground, and then as they go across and down, they will have more and more packers as they move away from that corner. So I'll start with putting down the two. Well, I'll start with putting down one beam along the bottom here, which the joists will line. The joists are going to run in this direction. That one's going to sit on the floor and run out and get higher, and then running down, sitting on this beam across the bottom there, and then across here and down and down and down. This copper pipe is an overflow waste pipe for the boiler, but there's room there and there's room to get that out underneath, and there's some staining on the floor, but that's not of any real concern. Right, so I'll get these first joists laid out. Okay, so I've just cut and laid out these first set of joists. As I say, that one's going to rest on the floor. This one's resting on this beam that I've got along the back, one in the middle, and then one over in this corner resting on the beam, and then going up and resting on the floor. So first thing I'm going to do is, that one's the highest point, so that's staying on the floor. I'm going to run a level across between these two and set the height of this joist. Okay, so you can see it's really important. It's a reasonably large distance. It's very important to get the level as accurate as possible. So what I'm going to do, because it's just a level resting across here, I'm just going to put these spacers just directly underneath the level, because it's just easier to do to start with, and check what that looks like. Not level. So let's stick another one under. And that's pretty close, but I'll try another one. No, still going to, oops. So I'm pushing that down. That's a teeny bit high, I think. Slightly too far over to this left hand side. Yeah. Okay, so that looks pretty much spot on to me. So now that was quite easy to do, putting the level. Obviously I'm doing it one-handed here, so it's quite tricky. But now what I'll do is I'll just transfer these underneath, and then that sets the level for that one. I'll attach these later. I'm just setting the level. Now, let's just check. That's still level. Good. I'm just going to slide the level across onto the other one and take some things with me. And I'll go across and check this one. Right, so that again is not central. Put that there. Okay. So I'll just slide one underneath. What we got? No. Just sliding one there. Put it back. Not enough. Another one. Okay, so that looks perfect to me. So I will now just transfer these underneath. Just check. Yeah, that's still level, exactly in between the two lines. So now, oops. That's an important tip. Try not to drop your level, and it damages it. They lose accuracy. Okay. Right, and dropping the level, I've knocked those off. Right, so now I'm leveling along this end. Sorry, this joist along here. Now, key thing to remember is I can't put the wedges underneath the level here, as I was doing before, which was, you know, quick and easy. Because if you look at this, if I lift up this end of the level, I'm tilting in the middle and I'm not getting the level across the full length. So I have to put the wedges underneath the piece of wood. So looking at that, that's out by quite a lot. So I'm going to stick a handful in, stick 3 in, see how far that gets us. And still short. Not the end of the world. Let's stick 2 more in. Let's put the piece of wood on instead of the level. Right. That's close, but it's touching the mark on the left hand side and not on the right. It's not, so it's not in the middle. I've got one more. See how that goes. and that is in the middle to me. So now we'll go across and do the other side, and then we join up in the middle and see if the whole thing is square. And that could be interesting. So, see, that's actually quite level. Interesting. So, I'll just put 2 on. It's a lot closer than the other one was anyway. And I think that's pretty good. Yep. Right. So now we'll level this middle one, which again, because I've got the level, I can put the things underneath that. And needs a bit more. Alright. Another one on. And that looks pretty good to me. Right, let's put these underneath. Oops. And now, the proof of the pudding, let's get the level across here. And we have, I think that's close enough. It's a teeny bit narrow on the left hand side, but I think that will do. Let's just check the other side. So actually, what is that? No, so I make that slightly over to the right. So let's raise that very slightly. A bit high. And then keep it up a little bit. Okay, I need a different one. I'll put a 3 in there. That's too much. Right. Put 2 2s in there, and that looks good. What do we have here? Okay, and that looks good to me too. Right. So this base we've got here is now completely flat and level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in all the other joists in between, and I also need to put some supports underneath this going along the length of it, every 400, so that it's got good support. I'm going to be putting the joists at 400s as well, so then I'll put supports at 400. So I'll crack on and do that, and we'll take another shot when I've done. Okay, so I've got these cross pieces. They were just to try and save on spaces, and to give me something to stop the joists from moving around as I was connecting them up. So I've just slid them underneath, and I push them as far up as they'll go until they just start touching one of the joists. And now I'll screw those down, and I've done the same with the second set here, which are thicker. I've got two different thicknesses of wood, and they've actually come in pretty much thirds. So that just gives me some horizontal stability in laying these out. So I'll just screw these down. And what I'll do is where it on the joist that it's not touching, I'll just slip a couple of spaces underneath there just to hold that to the right level, and that will then give us stability on the floor. So when I'm putting in these middle joists now, what I do, because I'm coming off the bottom beam here, I'm going to pack this out. So basically I'm just using the level as a straight edge. I've laid it across the two that are fixed, which are level, and I'm just pushing it firmly down on top of the two of them, not too far, I don't want to deflect it, and then I just pack underneath here until this touches it just nicely, and that's the right height. So I'm just going to screw this one in. Right, so now I've laid all of the joists. You can see I've got a support under each one, every 400. They're packed. You can see I put packers under different ones. You notice this one looks like it's not touching the ground because this thing's bowed up. But when the weight goes on it, they all then touch the ground together. So there's going to be, what's it called? Running machine, which is really heavy, possibly 2 weights, power trainer. There's going to be plenty of weight keeping it flat on the ground. So now is to get these boards and start laying them. And I'm just going to lay them in a end to end. I'm going down this way. I'm just going to start in that corner. So, right, with these tongued and grooved floorboards, you can lay them different ways up. Well, obviously that way up or the other way up. And then you can also decide where you want to put the joins. So you can start with this end against the wall and then join into that end, or you can start with that end against the wall and join into this end. Now what I like to do is start with this end. I join onto this corner, so I get, the reason I choose this one is because this is the bottom of the board and it is sitting on the joist, and I can see any debris. I've got full access to the whole side of the board, the whole amount of this tongue and groove. If you lay it the other way up, then what you find is that this piece is underneath, and you can't really see underneath to make sure you've got all the dust and debris and wood shavings and little bits of chipboard out of the way, and then that stops the next board from joining in properly. Likewise, if you put the other end against and then start trying to join on this end, if I can do this, you'll see you've got, no, it doesn't quite see, but you can see the bottom of the board here, you can't see because it's underneath. So if there's anything that's not right there, it's not so bad when it's floating in the air like this, but if you end up with it joining on a joist, then you can get stuff stuck in underneath it, same as you can get on these ones, and it stops it joining. So I always put that end against the wall, and then I'll be joining my next board on this nice clean edge, and obviously the next row will join onto this nice clean edge, and you work your way down from there. First thing I'm going to do though, because I want to have a nice edge along that back and a nice edge along that corner, first thing I'm going to do is just chop off that end and chop off the back. So the back, I will cut off a very small amount, just enough to remove the tongue, so it's a nice solid straight edge along the back that will go along that wall. On this end, if you notice, if I just trim the very edge of the board, I'm going to end up with a very little piece going on here, just one set of screws in there and then the join over here, which I don't really like. So what I will do is when I cut the far end off that board, I'll cut it so that the end comes here, and then I've got a few pieces. This is the first join, and then we'll roll it on from there. So now I've cut that end off. There's the offcut. That gives me a nice solid square edge to there. There's a little gap for expansion, and going up, then the end of this board sits there, and I've got some reasonable support for the other board that goes on the other side. It's tongued and grooved, so you don't have to worry about joining it over joists because it locks in together, and they'll be glued as well, so they doubly stuck together. So now I just need to take a very small amount off the back there so it sits flush and neatly against the wall. Okay, so I've now cut the back edge and I cut the side off this board. That's now laying down where it's going to go. Now I've measured from the edge of the green to the wall, and I get 106.05. No, 106.5 is that distance. So the next board, I measure from the top of the green, 106.5, and I'm going to cut this off, and then this piece will go there, and then this piece will slot in at this end, and then you just keep going, and that way you don't get any offcuts, and also you stagger the joins as well. Right, so there's that piece in. You can see the expanding glue spreading out of the joint. Now there's the offcut, which becomes the first board of the next row, and you'll see the joints are the joins are staggered then as well. So you come through. So I'll cut the next board, we'll fill up that piece, and the offcut will start off over here, and you keep just going across, and the joins just go across like that. Obviously, if it starts to get too close, too small a piece over there, I'll have to adjust it, and I'll have some waste at that point. But that way you don't have any waste on the boards. You just keep rolling them along and along and along, and you just got one possible. I mean, that piece that I cut off that corner to start it off with, that can be, depending on how close you are, that could be the final piece in this bottom corner. One thing to watch out for when you're measuring these boards, because you're measuring green to green, don't be tempted to hook the tape over the end, because that's going to give you the wrong measurement. Make sure that you hook the tape onto the green and then mark the green. Now, the other thing to do, because this is a chipboard, it can be quite easily damaged. So I just run into a screwdriver along the joints just to knock off any high points, any damaged bits, and don't worry about it if you knock a lump off. It's stuck together. Now just run it up, make sure everything's out of the way, visually inspect it. That one looks good. Yeah. And don't forget to check all the pieces before you put them down. Oops. But also double check the pieces that you've made. See here, you've got the glues popping out. Just get that out of the way. Just run that all the way along. Make sure that's empty. Right, what did you see there, actually? Yeah, run that all the way along, make sure that's empty, nothing's pushed inside. And then do a dry fit. Now, if you're laying in the floorboards in a room in a house, you've got skirting board. So you can leave a nice big expansion gap at the side, and the skirting board then will go over and cover the join. Or maybe you've even got plasterboard coming down to it as well, which gives you more room. But obviously in here I haven't got any skirting board, and this end doesn't fit, because I want to keep the clearances tight enough for some expansion but not tight enough for stuff to fall down. So what you end up having to do is pull, keep the boards like that, separate this edge one, and then what I'll do is lift up this board, slide it into that gap. I'll glue that first, slide it in, and then push the whole thing up in one go. So let's try and do this one-handed. So I'm lifting this edge up. Oops. No, it's not good. Right, so I'll put glue along there, put the two in while they were apart, and I've run glue right the way along that join. So I put these two together, push the two of them up. Now this board is designated my starter, this board. So I positioned it with the clearance that I want from the end, and I put two screws in, one either side. So this board is now held tight against that one and stationary. Now what I will do is kick this board in as tight as I can, and then lever it against the wall so as I get a nice tight join there. And then before the glue starts to expand, I'll stick two more screws in here, on here, and yeah, one here and one here. Some of these gaps aren't closing as well as I'd have liked. This first board didn't go down very straight. Here's a perfect example of how these boards get damaged in transit. And basically, just break it off. It's not doing anything for the board. Don't rub your hands up and down it because you'll get splinters like I've just done. But just bash off the broken bits. It's only a very small section, it's all toned and grooved, and that will probably fill with glue anyway. Likewise, top piece, scrape it out, next side, scrape it out. Oh, that's great. Each time you put a board down, make a mark, you can't see there, make a mark on the preceding board, at the end of the board, where the joist is. That way, because we're not putting all the screws in, because we're just trying to get them laid. Just make a mark and then we can go back afterwards and put all the rest of the screws in. Now, here's an interesting conundrum. So I've cut the end off. I'm in the right place. So I've cut the end off this board. I've cut this board to fit, and this is the end which I'm using to start the next end. And you can see it's quite short. I mean, I could use it, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it won't have a lot of support. It's only on one joist. So what I will do is, I won't use that piece. This offcut, which I had from the very beginning, I'm going to use that, and I will use it at its full length. And I will put it here. So I've got two joists it's sitting on, so it's nice and supported. and then I will cut the next board to fill that gap. Then I'll have a new end piece which will be slightly longer, and I can use that to start the next row if I had another row. Obviously I haven't got another row. That's my final row, but that's how you can then use an extra piece to avoid having little bits with only one support, which is why I didn't cut this piece particularly short, for that reason, because it's still of a size that's useful. Right, I'm going to cut that up now. Get these last two pieces. Right, to get this last piece in, you've got to cut something to make it fit. Now you've got two choices. You can either cut this little piece out of the corner, which will enable us to push it in and sit it down, or you need to cut off one of these tongues so that you can slide the other tongue in and then push the other one in. Now, again, if you're doing a room that's got skirting board, you'll have enough clearance around the corners that you won't need to do that, because the skirting board will cover the clearance gap. But with this one, where I'm trying to just keep a nice tight clearance all the way around, so what I've chosen to do is cut the tongue off that front edge. You can see it's still on that side, but I've cut it off this front edge. What that means is there will be a risk that this board can lift, but I've got screws. I'm using glue on the joint, and I've got screws close to the edge on those 2 points there, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. But you know, I'll make sure there's plenty of glue there, and then that'll give me a nice edge all around this corner there. Okay, and here we are, finished. Bird's eye view. It's just under 3 meters by just under 3 meters. I've put all of these boards down. There's three screws in each board across each joist. So one at the edge, one in the middle, one at the other edge. I normally do 4 screws in the house, but as this is in the garage, I thought 3 would be enough. The only other thing left to do is, as you can see here, there's quite a hole there and there's a bit of a gale blowing through. So I've got to put some kind of dustproofing, windproofing, draft proofing along that gap. Try and reduce the cold a little bit. Other than that, it's done. Time to start filling it up. There we go, and there's the running machine in. It's currently got a broken deck, which I'm waiting to be replaced, so can't use it at the moment. That's my turbo trainer, which is working fine. And here is a space for weights or possibly another running machine. We'll have to see. So, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something. See you on the next one. If you liked it, don't forget, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.